For those that might not have been at our education event taking place in person on May 15th, we ran out of time during our Ask the Experts panel. So today I have with me Dr. Bonnie Henning-Tressman, who is here to answer some of the questions we just never got to. So Dr. Bonnie, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's just get started in the interest of time. Okay, so our first question from the community is anonymous versus anonymized genetic testing. Okay. And under what conditions would someone's results be released? So there's kind of two questions there.
Okay, and let's just kind of go back to definitions. When something is anonymous, it means that there's a pseudonym, a fake name that's given. Anonymized is very similar to that, but what the community might be referring to, what this person might be referring to also is confidential or highly confidential. And it's really important to understand that no matter where you go, information should be confidential. This is not something that everyone should know about, but there are programs that offer what we call anonymous testing, which means that the information that you have is not associated with your medical record. And in fact, usually and typically you're given a pseudonym, a fake name. So with HD Reach's genetic testing path, the path that we have, the decision-making path as well as the genetic testing, it is anonymous and highly confidential, meaning that we do test people under a fake name that they agree to. We do attach that name to their real name, totally separate. When they do get the results and they want a piece of paper that says this fake name is their name, then they will be able to have that. It's also not part of any medical record. So when people are looking in terms of genetic testing, it's important to find out for the program, is it confidential, which many times it certainly is, and is it anonymous, meaning that I'm not going to be tested under my real name and it's not going to be associated with my medical record, so that if I go into the emergency room with a broken leg, all of a sudden anyone can open up the chart and see that I've been tested for Huntington's disease. So it's really important to ask lots and lots of questions in terms of that. Now, you had a backup question in terms of having the information released. For all programs, really very important that the only way to release information is through written or verbal consent. So if somebody says, I want you to be able to release this information to Social Security or to my employer or to one of my family members or friends, that has to come from the person themselves. So we do require that this is written down on paper and sent to us in terms of being able to release that information. Now, of course, when you do have your result visit, we're going to release that information to you because you've already consented to this program. And you can have people with you online for our program that you want to have this information given to. But again, if it's something else where you want us to send it to a third party, that is going to be something that is going to be, we have to obtain consent, your written consent, in order to make sure that we do that.
Great. Well, and the next question, was there anything else to add? I might have interrupted there.
I think it's just also important to think about the genetic testing process. And I think you might be asking me a question about that as well.
I do actually. Another question that came in is, what's a good way to prepare for the genetic testing process?
This is an excellent question, something that I get on my soapbox about a lot. So my first thought for people is you really need to think about your village, all the people in your support system. It is really hard to make this decision about testing. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of time and thought. And I think it's really important to know that sometimes people will go through the genetic testing process and then try to figure out later who they want to tell. Now, if it's negative, sometimes that makes it a little easier, but a lot of times people have siblings, and even though we know that one sibling's results is not dependent on the other person's, sometimes it's hard to say to a sibling, oh, I've tested negative. My thought is that it's really important to be able to talk to all these people beforehand so that you can say to people, I'm thinking of going on this journey. How much of this journey do you want to accompany me on? So that you can talk to people and know ahead of time how much they want to be part of this. If they don't, then you'll know ahead of time and you've given the control back to them. It's a huge burden to carry this on your shoulders, especially if you're positive, to say when is the right time to tell people. And a lot of times people who I've worked with have carried this burden on for years and years. And when they finally tell somebody, all of a sudden that person might say, I wish you would have told me earlier. I would have been a support for you, because it's a huge stress. So the first thing is, before you're even thinking about contacting somebody, is to for testing, is to talk to your support systems. How much do you want to be part of this journey, so that you know ahead of time and you take that burden off? The next thing is, it's really important before you talk to any professional to look at all of your benefits. And that could be health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, long-term disability and short-term disability, and long-term care. These are all benefits that are all different and do different things. For some people, if you're working in an employer with lots of people, you might be offered some of these things without them finding out any medical information. So it's like group insurance. But for a lot of times, maybe the life insurance isn't enough, or you want something like long-term care insurance, which is different than disability, then you might want to talk to a professional in terms of finding out what all those benefits could mean for you. Because a lot of times people who are at risk have this crystal ball of what might happen in the future, especially if you know that generation before. So if you're able to say, if I'm positive, I want to have a certain type of care at a certain place, maybe my home, and I want to be able to cover that and to pay for that, that might be really expensive. So it's really important to talk to professionals who provide those types of benefits. So you can say, is this something I want, and is this something I can afford? And also, there's lots and lots of other things to prepare. So there are resources such as HDYO, the Huntington's Disease Youth Organization, has a checklist right on our website that you can go over all these different questions for yourself and information, kind of a checklist to be able to prepare yourself for genetic testing. And I really encourage people, I know it takes a lot of courage to pick up the phone and say, I'm ready, but a lot of times people like Catherine and I will slow you down and say, okay, you might be ready, but have you thought about all these things? So I really encourage people to do that.
One very brief follow-up question. For those people who are considering and getting these items in order for themselves, specifically the benefits, when you say a professional to help them with like long-term care insurance and life insurance, is that like an estate planner or an attorney? I guess, what are some of the professionals, just off the top of your head, briefly, if you know, just to help people kind of know what to look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, first of all, it might be helpful to talk to somebody in your family or friends, somebody who you trust, to say, I need to look into all of these things. And then there are brokers who are able to, insurance brokers who are able to say, here's the different types of insurances. So we're talking about maybe medical insurance. Do you have medical insurance through your employer? If you don't and you need to get that individual, there are definitely brokers who will provide this type of insurance and different plans for you. So again, I think the most important would be that long-term care insurance, and know that there are professionals who this is their job, is to sell this type of long-term care insurance, and being open and upfront with them to say, hey, listen, I haven't done anything wrong yet. I don't have a chart or any kind of history written down anywhere about Huntington's disease. I'm at risk and I want to go and get tested, but I think it's really important for me to talk to somebody like you who can give me all the different plans to see if this is viable. I think one of the things, it's really important to know that these people are your advocates and can say, okay, if we are able to get you long-term care insurance and you're able to afford this, then here are the different plans. And now you can, once the ink is dry, once the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and you have that period that you're able to, that waiting period, so that you are actually have this type of insurance if needed, then to go ahead and look into the genetic testing. So there are like those professionals that you said, Catherine, in terms of insurance brokers and different, maybe human resources at a job, to say, it's open enrollment, what am I eligible for? So I think it's important to start looking into some of those the resources and asking lots of questions.
Oh, it's great information. Thank you. So we do have another question, and I know, Dr. Bunny, you do wear a number of hats, and you just mentioned HDYO. So this one is actually having more to do with talking to children. rather than genetic testing. The question is, what age is the right time to talk to kids about HD?
Also a very good question. And please know that there are lots of resources to help people talk to kids about Huntington's disease. So certainly, as we both mentioned, the HDO website, hdo.org, is a great place to go because it does help to answer some of those questions. My whole feeling, and the book that I wrote in a while ago and recently updated in 2017 called Talking to Kids About HD is available for people. But in my book, I say it's never too early and it's never too late. And obviously with really young kids, you're not going to sit down and talk about CAG repeats and all this, but to make it normal in the family that this is a term, Huntington's disease or HD. And then it's never too late to be able to say, even if you were a family that has tried to protect your children from Huntington's disease, because that was what you knew at the time, to be able to say, hey, I just listened to a conference, I listened to some information, and I found out that it's really important for me to let you know about what's going on in the family. So we do have Huntington's disease in the family. And again, this is a very, very short answer of it's never too early or never too late, but there are lots of resources through HDO that you can click on the website and start looking and reading some information about how to talk to children about HD. I know as a parent that it is really difficult to talk to things that to your children where you want to protect them. But by not talking about this doesn't make it go away, and it really causes a lot of issues in the long run. So please do know that there are plenty of people out there who are able to support you and know what it feels like to be able to talk to your children about Huntington's disease. So I really encourage you to look at some of those resources.
Great ideas. And just in the interest of time, we do have one last question. And that is just kind of generally, through the lens of HD, what gives you hope right now?
Oh gosh,
That's
this
a big
is
question.
big question, but it's an important question because I do have a lot of hope. I know that with the clinical trials, we've had some setbacks, but I've been in this field for over 20 years, and I see the hope and I see how much we are going forward and the new medications that are offered and new trials. So for me, it really is about community, about the hope of community that you do not need to be alone. So that is my hope, that people know that they don't have to be alone, that there's always going to be somebody who can talk to them and you don't have to explain Huntington's disease to them. Also, just in terms of clinical trials, that we are still going ahead on clinical trials, even disease modifying trials. So please do be hopeful, if not for this generation, for the next generation. I think we are going to see a lot of changes, and we have, even with some of the clinical trials that were not as stellar as we hoped that they would be. We are moving forward with some of those companies and offering new clinical trials. So please do reach out, know that you're not alone. And I think that does give me hope, that I think we can do this all together as a community, whether it's professionals like myself, people in families, people who have Huntington's disease. I think that we're stronger together, and that does give me a lot of hope.
What a wonderful way to end our quick discussion this afternoon. So, Dr. Bonnie, thank you for your time, and thank you for following up and answering some of these questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.